Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul. Hopefully you're having an amazing day. Are AMD planning to release a more powerful variant of RDNA 4 since they are being so competitive right now to the RTX 50 range of graphics cards? As you probably guessed from the video title, those are rumours that are swirling around the internet, and even some of my sources are telling me that they may actually be planning to do just that. Then we'll move on to their plans for APUs for the desktop, and then we're going to finish off with some actually really good news for RTX 50 supply. Long story short, RTX 5080s as well as various other SKUs in the RTX 50 lineup are becoming a lot easier to get hold of, so of course we'll talk about that right after this quick message from the sponsor of the video. If you're running a copy of Windows 10 which isn't activated, of course, not only do you have to worry about the missing customization options, but there's also that annoying Windows desktop watermark reminding you to activate. Today's video is sponsored by WhoKeys.com, and they've an excellent price on Windows 10 Professional as well as Home keys. Yeah, and they also of course sell games. I've bought a few Windows 10 keys with my own personal account to test everything was legit and worked in preparation for this sponsored video. You can pick up one of their keys for 25% off using the coupon code RGT in the checkout. There's links to their website in the video description. Also, if you're building a few systems, there's bundles available too. Again, you can check out WhoKeys.com and use the coupon code RGT for 25% off the listed Windows 10 key prices. So before we begin with the actual analysis, let's just go over one of the news stories and then we'll get into my rumours and then I'll give my thoughts and opinions. So my drivers are citing the source of Fast Technology, and basically the latest news, and this is actually a couple of weeks old now, AMD are developing a higher end variant of RDNA 4, and basically it's going to be releasing in the second quarter of 2025. The rumour is that the clock frequency is going to be seeing a significant improvement for the core, 3.2 to 3.4 gigahertz. It's going to have a 340 or higher TDP, and the higher frequency of GDDR6 memory as well. Now, if you were to take a look, just Google overclocking RX 9070 XT, you'll of course see that people have had really good results by undervolting the card and doing the normal stuff that you do for overclocking an AMD GPU. And ultimately, it does seem to be roughly on par with an RTX 5080. I say, of course, roughly because, well, normally, depends on the game and tons of other stuff. But yes, it seems that RDNA 4 is pretty overclockable. Now, unfortunately, oftentimes when they're overclocking the memory, it's not necessarily performing so well because error correction can start rearing its ugly head. With these rumours, they are also stating that they're going to increase the amount of memory up to 32 gigabytes. And we have seen in shipping manifests as well as other rumours that AMD may well be working on this, although it's worth noting that Frank Azer has publicly stated that they're not planning to release those GPUs, so I'm not too certain. Of course, quite early on with RDNA 4 rumours, we knew that they were working on higher end variants, which were known as Navi 4C, for example, and those were designed to take on NVIDIA's highest end cards. So nowadays, of course, that would be like the RTX 5090 or what have you, but those GPUs were unfortunately cancelled. And I say unfortunately because these were chiplet-based solutions. But even if AMD had only released a monolithic die, let's not be too greedy. Let's say they had between 25 to maybe 40% more workgroup processors. I'm just pulling out an arbitrary number there, of course. I think it's fair to say that they have had a really good shot at taking on most of NVIDIA's lineup, and it would have been really interesting if they had chosen to do that. And since then, I've had sources tell me that there's 128 compute unit variant as well as 112 compute unit variant that's potentially being worked on with 32 and 24 gigabytes of memory respectively. Now I have to tell you guys, with a higher end variant that would feature more compute units and so on, I am a little skeptical. Now unfortunately, the timelines are also another really big concern for this, because if AMD were to release a higher end variant, I guess it's possible they could be rekindling Navi 4C, but that would depend exactly how far they got. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. One of my cats is randomly climbing around on some of the boxes from a few deliveries, so it's a little distracting. The left, that is really not helpful, actually. God, cats. Anyway, yeah, where was my train of thought? My brain's gone brr. Oh yes, so if they were to bring back Navi 4C, it would depend when it was actually cancelled. And also, even if it was cancelled quite late into development, it could still be another 6 months bare minimum, more realistically a year, before it actually makes its way to the marketplace. So let's just say, hypothetically, that would be early 2026. And RDNA 5, or should I say UDNA at that point, is not too far along until it actually comes to market anyway, so I don't know if that makes sense. As for a higher end variant of what appears to be essentially the same die that's in the 9070 XT, maybe that's potentially possible, but I've not been able to verify this. It's going to be very interesting if AMD were to do this. They could perhaps do some type of refresh. Ultimately, these are rumours that at this stage I'm not 100% certain I believe. It'd be kind of cool if they did. Well, honestly, I don't necessarily know if AMD does need a faster GPU at this point. I think instead it makes a lot more sense for them to get as many of the 9070 XTs to the market as possible, and of course eventually cards like the 9060 XT, and just basically get a higher percentage of users that are getting into the AMD ecosystem. Because ultimately, again, I've said this a few times at this point, there are a lot of folks who, yes, of course, would buy a higher end card from AMD, and it is very exciting, and obviously from a marketing perspective, having the fastest GPU is really cool. On the other hand, the reality is that how many people want to spend $1,000 on a graphics card, or even $800? I think having a good number of cards available in servicing both lower end and mid-range users is perhaps the better way to go for AMD for now. Then put all of the research and development and effort into having UDNA being as good as possible. Now, I want to give credit here to WCCF Tech, but also 9550 Pro, who originally posted this rumor. And basically speaking, it seems that there will be AMD APUs that will be releasing on the AM5 platform, and of course these are basically going to be Strix Point Ryzen 9000G, and they're of course going to use Zen 5 and RDNA 3.5 iGPUs. Now, it's worth noting that Lisa Su herself has said that well, this is potentially going to be happening, or at least it's coming to the desktop. She didn't specifically mention the platform. This is from an interview from a few days ago. So I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if this is going to happen. Ultimately, I think there is a really good market for these, especially in things like small form factor systems. The AM5 platform, if it is anything like the AM4 platform, has a good life in front of it, is what I'm trying to say. Like, just hypothetically, let's say you jumped on the 1600X and you still have like the B350 or whatever board you bought. You could have then moved to like the 2700X, you could have then moved to the 3950X or what have you. And yes, of course, maybe you may have wanted to upgrade your board at some point or another. But it's kind of funny because for a lot of folks, even if they bought one of the earlier boards, especially the 350s and the X370s were a little hinky, especially for some manufacturers, because they didn't put a huge amount of research and development into the board, because quite frankly they didn't have a huge amount of faith in Ryzen, to my understanding anyway. But by the time like the 2000 series and the 3000 series came around, the boards were just so much better, and of course this meant that oftentimes they would be really good for like, just improving memory compatibility and so on and so on. So I have to say, I think that AM5 having this type of product available, it's of course not necessarily going to be great for everyone, but I think for someone who wants to build like a small form factor system, especially if you don't need the most performant of graphics cards or what have you, I think it's going to be pretty good. And that brings us, of course, to the RTX 50 stuff. And yeah, RTX 50, I've put out a few videos already to say that the supply is getting better for RTX 50 graphics cards, and while I don't think it's exactly where it needs to be, there are a lot of positive signs for gamers. Trending on Twitter was Falcon Northwest. We know the lines have been long this spring, but RTX 50 series cards are improving. The beautiful 5070 Founders Edition has arrived. Build times for many of our desktops are now finally under 30 days for Tiki, Frag, Box and Rack models. And again, we are seeing a lot of different companies, even in the UK actually, Scan, a number of other websites I've checked, 5070s are pretty available. The 5070 Ti is 5050. Some of the higher end RTX 5080 models are actually reasonably available, and I've even seen some mid-range or cheaper RTX 5080s. They do sell out pretty quick, but they are starting to get better in terms of supply. And Zed Wang, or Mega-Sized GPU, on Twitter is also stating much the same thing. He's mentioned a few times now that the supply from Nvidia is increasing, and of course it's going on to AIBs. And I think that my advice to everyone, unless you really need a GPU, do not buy these cards that are insanely inflated MSRP. Wait as long as possible. It basically is a message to retailers as well as, of course, AIBs, but mostly retailers, you know, to kind of be more honest, let's just say, with their pricing. And I think perhaps we're going to see a much better supply over the next several months of graphics cards. Of course, there is a lot of backlog because people just want to upgrade, so it's not going to be to the point where you can just wander into any store. But I don't think it's going to. I don't think it's going to be that much longer before it's reasonably easy to pick up an RTX 5080 or an AMD graphics card if that's what you want. Another really positive thing of this is that both AMD's 9060 as well as the RTX 5060 Ti range of cards, from what I've heard, and you know, the rumors are the supply is much better this time around. I suspect they're still going to sell out, but it's going to be very interesting also to see how the market responds to Nintendo Switch 2. Of course, we're pretty much waiting on the wings now for this announcement. The rumor is that early April the system is going to go on pre-sale. So, yeah. With that said, guys, hopefully you have enjoyed the video. Normal service will resume over the next few days in terms of putting out content. It's been just kind of manic for me over the past week or two, but normal service will resume. Apologies, by the way, for recording, what's the word, shirtless. Vest is bloody boiling in this room. So, yeah, unfortunately, like, summer, and I don't do super well in high temperatures, unfortunately. With that said, take care of yourselves. Bye for now.